With our UVs generated and created for our bear, it's time for us to go in and begin marking the boundaries of all of our separate UV islands on the mesh itself so that we can unwrap them and have a very efficient representation of our three-dimensional shape in our two-dimensional UVs. So this is what our UVs look like at the moment. These are just kind of the spherical UVs, and that's by design. The first step is just kind of getting some UVs, generating them. And then we'll go back in and edit them, and that time to edit has begun. There are a couple great ways for us to go in and mark all of the seams of our different UV islands here inside of Maya, but I find the most efficient way to do it, and probably the most visual way to do it, is with the 3D Cut and Sew tool found inside of Maya. Now, before we start, it's important to point out that I'm in my UV selection state here inside of my modeling toolkit. Now, you don't necessarily have to be inside of your modeling toolkit to enable this selection state. If you don't have your UV editor open, you can also get to the selection of our UVs right here inside of our modeling toolkit. In addition, if we were just to simply right-click and hold, the marking menu will pop up, and you can see we have a section inside the pie menu called UVs. So we have a couple different ways of going in and selecting and manipulating our UVs. So the first thing is to be inside of the UV selection state. The next is to activate the 3D Cut and Sew tool. And you can find that in the UV toolkit, but you can also find it under the UV pull-down menu at the top of the screen. And it's way down over here, 3D Cut and Sew. And this is a great tool for us to very quickly go in and mark on the geometry itself where all of our seams are going to be. So let's fire it off. Now what this is going to do is that it's going to allow us to go in and physically left-click and drag on edges that we want to be a seam. It's kind of a little bit of a dance that we play when we're marking and unmarking, and you'll see that here in a minute. But it's all going to be at the edge level. So we're not working with individual verts. We're trying to define edges that represent the seams. At this stage of the production of our UVs, all we're doing is marking the seams, and then we'll use those marked seams as the generation of our unwrapped UVs in the next steps. So let's go ahead and mark it real fast. So the way this works is that we need to go in on the mesh itself and physically left-click and drag on these edges. Now I'm left-clicking and dragging, and you see this little red line appears. Think of this red line kind of like your brush tip. Any edge that's underneath that brush tip is going to be marked as a seam, and I'm just dragging over it. We can start anywhere we want. We'll just drag down like this. I'm going to go in and I'm going to mark the entirety of my seam like this. There we go. Now, if I mess up, for example, and accidentally mark the wrong one, that's okay, because we can go in and we can hold down the control key and then once again left-click and drag, and it's going to unmark those seams. I'm back at it over here. Now I'm just left-clicking and drag. Looks like I didn't get this one, so I'm going to left-click and drag that way while holding down the control key. Control is minus. Just left-clicking and dragging is going to be the positive function of the tool itself. There we go. And now I've marked a seam. Oop, forgot one. And on the ones where it's just a single edge, yeah, I kind of just do a couple on that row to get it up and running. So there we go. Now we've marked a seam. Now I want to get rid of all of this jazz here in the back. All of these seams were created from the spherical unwrap. So I'm going to hold down the control key and start hovering over. However, one of the things that you'll find when using the 3D Cut and Sew tool is that it can be kind of slow. The way that the tool kind of finds the edge and then selects and tags those edge with a seam cut can be a little slow, but there's a great little modifier that will help, and it's the Shift key. Now watch what happens when I add the Shift key into the mix. Of course, if I just did the Shift key while left-clicking and dragging, see how it's much fast and much more quick at finding the loop, and it's going to just zip around all the way. Same thing goes when holding down the Control and Shift. I can deselect that loop pretty fast, and that's what I'm going to do here. I'm going to go in, say, I don't want you tagged. I don't want you tagged, holding Control and Shift. I don't want you tagged. So it's all about going in and just kind of tagging these seams with where we want them to cut. Here we go. All right, so let's do a couple more here. Let's do the legs, and this is where having that Shift key inside of our tool set is really helpful, because now I can just hold down the Shift key, left click and drag, maybe on this edge, and watch how fast it goes. Just whoop, I'm left clicking and drag, and it automatically finds the edge loop, and marks it for us. Let's do it one more time, holding down Shift, whoop, and I'm on my way. It makes going in and working with these seams just real fast. Holding down Shift now, just kind of zips them right along. Now I'm only going to do a couple, but eventually I'm going to do all of the edges or all of the body parts on my bear. Here we go, and things are looking pretty good. I like that. That's a great way of very quickly going in and marking all of our seams with the 3D cut and sew tool. Now I think I'm going to take this one step further, and I'm going to start marking the seams for the underside of the bear, because this is a great location to hide a seam. Now if you look carefully here, it goes up underneath the bear, and then it's going to terminate at the tail. Well, maybe we use that as a feature. Maybe we use the termination point in the natural shadow that the tail is going to create as a feature point for the mesh itself. When it comes to marking our seams, we kind of have to start plotting and planning out where we want these seams to go. And this white line here that indicates where the seams are is a great visualization of how we're going to break apart the geometry in a whole series of separate two-dimensional chunks. So let's look at the tail and how we can mark the tail to get the best result. I think what I want to do is that I want to try to hide the seam maybe right in here. Oh, that loop goes on the tip, so I don't want it to go on the tip of the tail, because that's going to be pretty noticeable. Holding down Control there. What about this next row, the one that goes under? Yeah, what about this one? That might be a good place to go. We'll see it for a little bit, but that's okay. Do the same for the other side. We want to make our UV seams as symmetrical as we can. Wonderful. Now, because I didn't close the loop, because I didn't do this, the tail is going to still be attached to the body itself. It's going to get ironed out and smoothed out, and it might get a little funky in the back, but that's okay. If there's a place to hide some distortions, it would be in the tail itself. So I'm okay with it not being its own island. The parts of our mesh that are going to be their own island are the parts that are completely surrounded by a seam loop, that white line inside of our object. Okay, with a good preview and an understanding of how all of this is going to work, let's go back into our UV toolkit for a second and start to understand the visualization of these separate UV islands. And let's do this. I'm going to go back into my visualization buttons up here, and I'm going to click on this guy. This second one is going to colorize all of the islands that are encapsulated by the seam, and now we can really start to see how the computer is going to break apart this model. Well, shoot, while we're here, might as well just do the other leg real fast. It goes real quickly. There we go. And since that visualization state is on, we get a real great understanding of how this is going to work just right here in the viewport. And that's what I like about the UV mapping tools inside of Maya. We get a lot of visualization tools that helps me make a super important, informed decision on how this is going to work. Okay, so I'm liking this. This is a good place to go. And the computer is automatically assigning these colors for me. So if you look, there's 3 legs here that are green and 1 leg that's purple. That's just the computer automatically assigning a color. It doesn't have any sort of connection to how the UVs are going to operate in the UV map themselves. If you notice that this leg is purple, and then we also have the head purple. Again, they're completely separated out, or they will be in a minute once we unwrap them all. Now the head might give me some problems here. If you think about it, the head is a gigantic spherical shape. At the moment, I'm not sure if it's going to unwrap correctly, and that's okay. You're going to find that when we unwrap things, there's a little bit of an exploration process that one has to go through to kind of figure out the puzzle, if you will, that's in front of us. And that's okay. It's part of the system. It's expected that we unwrap something and then go, that didn't work out so well, and then we figure out a solution to that problem itself. With all of our UVs marked, we're pretty much ready to go and start unwrapping our model, and that's going to come in the next step in our UV mapping process.